I used to think the world was mine, that if I worked hard enough, pushed fast enough, and shut out every distraction, I could build something untouchable. I was wrong. My name is Julian Cross. I'm 42 years old, CEO of Cross and Stratton Holdings, and for the past decade, I've sat at the very top of a towering empire, an empire built on billion-dollar mergers, sleepless nights, and sacrificed relationships. And yet, standing at the floor-to-ceiling window of my Manhattan office, gazing over the glittering skyline, I've never felt emptier. My desk was cluttered with quarterly reports I couldn't bring myself to read. The silence was broken only by the low hum of my phone, lighting up again, another reminder from my assistant that my car was waiting to take me to Ocean Heights, a sleepy little coastal town in Massachusetts. Ocean Heights. I hadn't heard that name in 5 years. Not since her. I ran my hand through my hair, adjusted the collar of my custom charcoal suit, and grabbed my briefcase. I had told everyone it was just a routine business trip, another merger, another acquisition. But I knew the truth. Deep down, I knew exactly why I was going back. The 3-hour drive was torture. Too much time to think. Too much time to remember what I'd buried. 5 years ago, I walked away from someone who had given me her entire heart. Her name was Camille. She was sunlight, the kind of person who stopped to talk to street musicians, who wrote letters instead of emails, who dreamed of bookstores by the sea and named her houseplants. I didn't deserve her. I knew that even then. But I didn't just walk away from Camille. I walked away from something far greater. The town was just as I remembered, slow, salty, drenched in sunlight and small-town charm. As I turned onto Main Street, my eyes were drawn to the same worn-down diner we'd once visited. And that's when I saw her. Camille. She was stepping out of the diner, her honey-blonde hair now trimmed into a softer, shoulder-length cut. She wore a simple blouse, her smile just as warm as I remembered, the kind of smile that could light up a room without even trying. But it wasn't just her. Trailing behind her were 2 little girls. Identical. Matching blue dresses. Matching chestnut braids. They skipped out the door with stuffed toys in hand, bouncing with energy and joy. And I swear, the world stopped spinning. They couldn't have been more than 5 years old. My heart slammed in my chest. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. I knew. I knew before I even heard their names. She opened the car door and called to them. Maya, Elodie, buckle up, please. Their names. My daughters' names. The daughters I never knew I had. I pulled my car over, shaking. My stomach turned as I watched Camille help them into the back seat of a modest SUV. One of the girls dropped her stuffed rabbit, and Camille's laughter, that sweet, melodic sound that used to be my favorite thing in the world, drifted across the street like a ghost from another life. I'd spent years chasing power, building a legacy, telling myself that love could wait, that I wasn't ready for a family. Now, that choice stood in front of me in pigtails and polka dots, laughing in the arms of a woman I'd thrown away. I had left Camille before she ever told me she was pregnant. I thought I was making the logical choice. She thought I was cruel. Looking back now, we were both right. My phone buzzed again, a message from my CFO, reminding me of a conference call I was already late for. But for the first time in 15 years, I didn't care. I sat there, frozen, watching the life I could have had drive away. A family. 2 daughters. A woman who once loved me with every piece of her soul. That night, in a quiet hotel room overlooking the harbor, I didn't sleep. I stared at a blurry photo I'd taken of the 3 of them outside the diner. I canceled every upcoming meeting, cleared my schedule indefinitely. When my assistant asked if I was okay, I simply told her, the board can wait. This is more important. Because I knew. I wasn't here for a merger. I was here for a miracle. Tomorrow, I would begin the hardest negotiation of my life. And this time, it wasn't about numbers or leverage. It was about bedtime stories, tiny handprints, and 5 stolen years I could never get back. Tomorrow, I would try to earn something no amount of power could buy, a second chance at being a father. The next morning, I parked across from Ocean Heights Elementary. I sat in my car for nearly 30 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. Through the tinted glass, I watched the slow rhythm of morning drop-offs, parents walking hand in hand with their kids, goodbyes whispered with hugs and promises of after-school treats. The kind of scene I had never been part of. Then I saw her again. Camille. She pulled into the lot in that same modest SUV. She stepped out wearing a simple navy dress, her hair tucked behind her ears, a tote bag slung over one shoulder. She looked steady, like a woman who had built a life here. A life without me. Then came the girls, Maya and Elodie, bouncing out of the back seat, their backpacks matching, their shoes lighting up as they skipped toward the school entrance. Camille leaned out and called after them with a smile, "Have a great day, my loves. Remember, Aunt Tessa is picking you up." Aunt Tessa, Camille's younger sister. The same woman who'd once thrown a glass of wine in my face at a dinner party and told me I didn't deserve Camille. Honestly, she was probably right. I didn't plan what happened next. I just acted. I stepped out of the car and called her name. "Camille." She froze mid-step. The way her body tensed, I knew she'd recognized my voice instantly. Slowly, she turned to face me. Her expression was carefully blank, composed, unreadable. But her eyes were a storm. "Julian," she said. Cold, controlled. Like I was a stranger she barely remembered. "We need to talk," I said, my voice barely holding steady. "No," she replied. "We really don't. They're mine, aren't they?" The words escaped before I could second-guess them. Camille's entire body stiffened. The muscles in her jaw clenched. "You lost any right to that question 5 years ago." "I didn't know," I whispered. She laughed, but it was sharp, brittle, nothing like the laugh I remembered. "No, Julian. You chose not to know. You looked me in the eye and told me that starting a family was a distraction, that your empire couldn't afford emotional liabilities. Remember that." My throat closed. "You knew then?" "When I left." She nodded slowly, the first tear glinting in the morning light. "I was going to tell you that night. I had the test in my bag. We had dinner plans. I was going to surprise you." I closed my eyes. It hurt more than I expected. "But you didn't come home," she said, her voice cracking. "You showed up at my office instead. Told me you were done. That you were moving to Singapore for 6 months and couldn't drag a relationship along like deadweight. So no, I didn't tell you. I protected my children from a man who had already chosen everything else over them." The silence between us felt suffocating. "If I had known," I began. "What?" She cut in. "You would have stayed out of guilt? Sent money? Visited twice a year and smiled in photos?" "No," I said. "I would have stayed. Because I would have wanted to stay." She stared at me, her expression hard, but beneath it, I saw something flicker. Pain, maybe. Or exhaustion. "I want to know them," I said. My voice was shaking now. "I want to be part of their lives. You don't just get to want that, Julian. You don't just show up in town and claim a stake in something you abandoned." "I didn't abandon them," I said. She took a step back, her eyes burning. "Yes, you did. You abandoned them before they even took their first breath." "I'm not leaving Ocean Heights," I said, standing taller. "I'm overseeing the merger here myself. Could take months." "Of course," she scoffed. "Because everything's a business strategy to you. Even this. That's not fair." "Fair." Her voice rose, then fell as she remembered the other parents watching. She took a breath. "Fair would have been having their father at their first birthday, at the hospital when they were sick, when they learned to ride bikes, when they cried, asking why other kids had dads and they didn't." I swallowed hard, the guilt like poison. "I can't change the past," I said, "but I can be here now." "Until what?" She shot back. "Until another company needs you? Until being a dad gets inconvenient again?" She checked her watch. "I'm going to be late for work. Stay away from them, Julian. I mean it." She turned, her heels clicking against the pavement, but I couldn't let her leave like that. "Not this time. They're my daughters too, Camille," I called after her. "Whether you like it or not, that's the truth. And I'm not walking away this time." She paused, didn't turn, but she said over her shoulder, "You know what's ironic? 5 years ago, I would have given anything to hear you say those words." Then she looked at me, really looked at me. "And now? Now they're just another promise I don't trust you to keep." She walked away, her figure swallowed by the sea of parents and children. And I stood there, alone, surrounded by the ghosts of the life I could have had. But something had shifted in me. Because this time, I wasn't leaving. 2 weeks. That's how long I waited. Not because I was scared, although, truthfully, I was, but because I knew I had one chance to do this right. To see them, speak to them, connect without scaring them away. It had to feel accidental. Casual. Not like the emotional ambush it really was. So I waited. I planned. And one sunny Saturday afternoon, I found myself standing outside Sweet Drift, the local ice cream parlor Camille used to adore. The place hadn't changed, the peeling blue awning, the smell of waffle cones and syrupy fudge wafting from inside. But I wasn't looking at the storefront. I was watching the people through the window. There they were. 2 little girls seated at the corner table, giggling as they devoured ice cream bigger than their heads. Sitting beside them was a woman I instantly recognized, Tessa, Camille's sister. Aunt Tessa, the one who once vowed I'd never get near her niece again. I stepped inside just as the bell above the door gave a cheerful jingle. It was such a normal sound, but my chest was thundering like I just walked into battle. Don't tell your mom about the extra sprinkles, Tessa was saying playfully. It's our little secret. Pinky promise, both girls chirped in unison. Their voices, God, their voices. It was like hearing music written just for me. I stepped up to the counter and ordered a plain vanilla cone. My hands were sweating. Then I heard her behind me. Of all the ice cream shops in all the towns, Tessa's voice was low, sharp. What the hell are you doing here, Julian? I turned to face her. She looked exactly the same, fierce, guarded, ready to fight. Tessa, I nodded, trying to keep my voice calm. You look well. Cut the crap. Her eyes darted to the girls. If this is some kind of game. It's not, I said quickly. I didn't plan this. She raised an eyebrow, so high it nearly disappeared into her hairline. You think I believe that? Before I could answer, disaster struck. Charlotte, or maybe it was Maya, I still couldn't tell them apart, tipped her sundae, sending a tidal wave of chocolate sauce and rainbow sprinkles straight down the front of her dress. Oh no, she gasped. Charlotte, honey, it's okay. Tessa started reaching for napkins, but I beat her to it. I knelt beside the table and held out a handful. Here, I said gently. I've had my fair share of dessert disasters. Charlotte blinked at me through watery eyes, sniffling. Really? Once, I spilled an entire milkshake down my suit. Right before a meeting with the mayor of Chicago. I told everyone it was a bold fashion statement. She giggled, and wiped her nose. Maya leaned forward, suddenly curious. Did anyone believe you? No, I grinned. But they were too polite to say otherwise. You're funny, Charlotte said. I'm Charlotte. That's my twin, Maya. My heart stopped. My throat tightened. I smiled as calmly as I could. Nice to meet you both. I'm Julian. Do you live here? Maya asked, tilting her head the exact same way Camille used to. I do now, I said. I'm working with local businesses. Trying to get to know the town. Our mom works at the library. Charlotte chimed proudly. She reads the best stories and helps kids find books. She's the best mom ever, Maya added, licking her spoon with reverence. I couldn't speak for a second. That sentence, simple and pure, hit me harder than any boardroom betrayal I'd ever faced. Tessa stepped closer, her voice quieter but loaded with fury. Don't do this, Julian. Don't get their hopes up. Don't confuse them. I'm not trying to confuse anyone, I said, watching the girls happily rebuild their Sundays. I just want to know them. You had your chance 5 years ago, she snapped. You could have had all of this. Instead, I watched Camille cry herself to sleep every night for months. I made a mistake, I said, my voice hoarse. A big one. No. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was abandonment. She was right. She was absolutely right. Thank you, Mr. Julian. Both girls chirped as I paid for fresh sundaes. You're very welcome, I said. My voice cracked on the last word. Will we see you again? Maya asked, her eyes wide with hope. I looked at Tessa. She didn't answer, didn't nod, but she didn't say no either. Maybe, I said softly. This is a small town, after all. As they walked out, I sat alone at the empty table, their laughter still ringing in my ears. And for the first time in years, I felt something real inside me again. Hope. I wasn't sure what I expected when I walked into the Ocean Heights Public Library that afternoon. Maybe for her to scream. Maybe for her to throw a book at my head. What I didn't expect was for my heart to shatter at the sight of her reading to a room full of children. Camille sat cross-legged in the middle of the children's section, a half-circle of preschoolers gathered around her. She was radiant, alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her voice shifted with each character in the book, drawing laughter, gasps, and wonder from the kids like she was casting some sort of magic spell. And there, in the front row, were Maya and Charlotte. Bright-eyed, completely captivated, their hands resting gently on each other's knees. That's all for today's story time, Camille said, closing the book with a satisfied smile. Now, who wants to help Mrs. Henderson sort the return cart? The kids scattered like happy confetti. Camille stood, and our eyes met. Her smile faltered. And then Charlotte spotted me. Mr. Julian. Camille's head snapped toward her daughter. You know him. He helped me when I spilled my ice cream, Charlotte beamed. He was really nice, Mommy. Camille's expression turned to steel in an instant. Maya, Charlotte, go help Mrs. Henderson with the books, she said, her voice tight. The moment the girls were out of earshot, she whirled on me. You planned that ice cream shop meeting, didn't you? Not exactly, I said, though we both knew it was partly true. But it wasn't malicious. I just needed to see them. She crossed her arms. You're not entitled to this, Julian. You don't get to want to be a dad now that it's convenient. I don't think it's convenient, I said. I think it's necessary. For them. For me. For you. Her jaw clenched. What do you want from me? Joint custody. She dropped the stack of books in her hands like they'd caught fire. I'm sorry. What? I've already spoken to my lawyers, I said, cautiously. They're my daughters, Camille. I have rights. Rights? She hissed. Where were your rights when I was in labor for 20 hours alone? When I held their hands through fevers and nightmares? When they asked me, again and again, why other kids have daddies and they don't? I know I missed everything, I said. But I'm here now. I bought a house. On Harbor Lane. I'm not going back to New York. I've moved the company's regional operations here. This isn't a phase. This isn't a merger, Julian, she snapped. These are our daughters. Their hearts. Their trust. I'm not playing a game. Camille's hands trembled as she began reshelving books. For the first time in my life, I said, I'm doing something that has nothing to do with shareholders. This is about them. About us. We were interrupted by a tiny voice behind us. Mommy. We turned. Maya stood there in her polka-dotted tights and glittery shoes, clutching a ballet flyer. Can Mr. Julian come to our recital? Camille's face froze. Maya, sweetheart, I don't think. Please. Maya's lip trembled. All the other daddies are coming. That word. Daddies. It slammed into me like a truck. Camille looked like she might break. When is it? I asked gently. Next Saturday. Maya chirped. We're gonna be butterflies. Camille's eyes fluttered shut for a moment. When she opened them, I could see it, the cracks in the wall she'd built. If Mr. Julian isn't too busy with work, she said finally, he can come. Maya let out a squeal and bolted off to tell her sister. Camille turned to me slowly. This doesn't mean anything. No, I said, but it's a start. She exhaled slowly. The recital starts at 6:30. They need to be there early for makeup. I'll be there at 6, I promised. She stared at me, studying, searching for signs of the man I used to be. I bought the old Victorian, I added quietly. The one with the garden you used to talk about. You really are serious about this, she murmured, almost to herself. Dead serious. She looked toward the children's corner, where Maya and Charlotte were dancing with tool wings. You've done an amazing job with them, I said. I had to, she whispered. They were all I had. My heart ached. I want to make this right. Not just for them. For you too. Camille's voice was barely audible. It's too late for us, Julian. Maybe, I said. But it's not too late for them. As I left the library, I felt her eyes on my back. And for once, I didn't rush to a meeting. I didn't check my phone. I just stood on the sidewalk, heart pounding, knowing I had just taken my first real step toward redemption. The auditorium at the Ocean Heights Community Center buzzed with chatter and perfume and nervous energy. Folding chairs scraped against the floor. Parents whispered, siblings squirmed. The stage curtain rustled like it was trying to hold in something magical. I arrived exactly at 6. In each arm, I carried a bouquet, pink and purple lilies, the kind Maya and Charlotte had pointed out in the florist window last week. I'd spent 20 minutes obsessing over the arrangement until the florist asked, gently, are these for someone important? Yes, I said. The most important people in the world. As I made my way toward the front row, a familiar voice spoke behind me. You came. Tessa. Arms crossed, lips tight, but something in her eyes had softened. Front row? I asked, holding up the flowers. Sophie saved you a seat. She nodded toward Camille, who was already seated, a navy blue dress hugging her figure, her hair in soft waves. Her eyes flicked to me. Cool. Calm. But she gave a small nod of acknowledgement. You're early, she said. I said I would be. A beat of silence passed. Then she sighed. They're nervous, but excited. Charlotte's been twirling in the kitchen for a week straight. Just like you, I murmured. Camille blinked, surprised. Then, slowly, a smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. The lights dimmed. The room hushed. Scene 1. Scene 2. Dancers floated and stumbled across the stage in pink tulle and glitter shoes. Parents clapped politely, cameras flashing like lightning bugs. Then, Scene 3. The butterfly garden. The curtain opened, and I stopped breathing. Maya and Charlotte fluttered onto the stage in iridescent wings, their arms stretched wide, their tiny feet moving in near-perfect synchronicity. Charlotte, ever focused, moved with quiet intensity, her brow furrowed, counting every beat. Maya, bright and uninhibited, twirled with abandon, smiling at the audience like she'd been born in the spotlight. They weren't flawless. Charlotte stumbled once. Maya forgot a step and skipped it with flair. But to me, they were nothing short of miraculous. When they struck their final pose, arms raised like wings caught in mid-flight, the crowd erupted. So did something inside me. I stood. I clapped until my palms stung. And when they looked into the crowd and their eyes found mine, it was like the world had been cracked open and made new again. After the recital, the lobby filled with balloons, proud grandparents, and kids dragging tutus over polished tile. I stood off to the side, unsure, watching, waiting. Then I heard it. Mr. Julian. They barreled toward me, still in costume, cheeks flushed with pride. You were amazing, I said, kneeling, handing them the flowers. These are for you. Their eyes widened. They're so pretty, Maya gasped. They look like real butterfly wings, Charlotte whispered, holding hers with reverence. Camille approached, her expression unreadable. Girls, she said gently. What do we say? Thank you, Mr. Julian, they chorused. Can he come get ice cream with us? Maya blurted. Please, Mommy, Charlotte added. Aunt Tessa always takes us for Sundays after. Camille hesitated. I held my breath. Then, to everyone's surprise, Tessa stepped in. I think that would be nice, she said quietly. Besides, I need the full story on Maya's extra spin. The girls cheered. And that's how I found myself sitting across from my daughters at a sticky ice cream booth that smelled like childhood. Charlotte explained every move from the recital like a military operation. Maya retold it as a fairy tale, complete with talking flowers and a magical storm. They're so different, I murmured to Camille, who sat beside me, her arms folded but her posture no longer hostile. They balance each other, she said. Charlotte keeps Maya focused. Maya helps Charlotte breathe. She looked at them, her eyes soft. Kind of like us. Once upon a time. I turned to her. Camille, Not here, she said quickly. Not now? This night is about them. Before I could reply, Charlotte called out. Mommy, can Mr. Julian read us our bedtime story tonight? Camille froze. Sweetie, I don't think. Please. Maya's voice cracked just enough to make every adult in the booth wince. He does good voices. We heard him at the library. I looked at Camille, my expression open. No pressure. Just a question. One story, she said finally. Then it's straight to bed. The ride to their house was filled with giggles and sugar-high chatter. Inside, the girls showed me their room. Butterflies everywhere, of course. I sat between their twin beds, opened the book they picked, and gave it everything I had. Silly voices, dramatic pauses, even sound effects. Camille watched from the doorway, arms crossed, but smiling. Later, as I stepped out onto the porch, the night cool and quiet, she joined me. They're falling for you, she said quietly, wrapping her arms around herself. If you disappear again. I won't, I said. She looked at me, skeptical. I know you don't trust that yet, I said softly. But I'll earn it. Every day. Inside, the sound of quiet breathing and rustling blankets filled the house. And for the first time in years, I felt something I thought I'd lost forever. Peace. The storm rolled in faster than expected, thick clouds stretching over the harbor, thunder murmuring like a warning I didn't want to hear. I sat in my new office above Main Street, staring at numbers that should have terrified me. And yet, they didn't. Cross and Stratton Holdings was beginning to buckle. Share prices down. London expansion stalled. Investors nervous. My COO sending increasingly desperate emails. The board whispering about emergency meetings. And all I could think about was Maya's science project. She had butterflies in jars, real ones, in chrysalis form. Charlotte had created a precise model of metamorphosis with diagrams, color-coded graphs, even a timeline. They'd invited me to the science fair 2 weeks ago, and I had promised I wouldn't miss it. That promise was being tested now. Linda, my assistant who'd followed me from Manhattan, stepped in, expression grim. Julian, the board's calling an emergency meeting. In person. New York. Tomorrow morning. I didn't answer immediately. I just looked down at the calendar. A red circle around 2 p.m. Science fair, do not miss. Linda hesitated. They're worried. You've been off. Unavailable. I'm not going, I said quietly. They're threatening a vote of no confidence, she replied. If you're not there. I said. I interrupted, looking her dead in the eyes. I'm not missing the science fair. She left, wordless. A minute later, my phone buzzed. A text from Camille. The girls are so excited. Maya's wearing her lab coat all day. Don't be late. I smiled. And at the same time, my chest tightened with guilt. I was balancing two worlds, the empire I'd built, and the one I had only just rediscovered. Later that day, just as the rain began to fall, I stepped into the school gymnasium, soaked but present. Dozens of tables lined with construction paper, glitter, and proud little inventors. Mr. Julian. They ran to me in matching white coats, their names stitched across the pockets. A gift I'd made. The smiles on their faces were worth every crisis in my inbox. Show me everything, I said. Charlotte led me to her display like a tour guide. These show all the stages of butterfly development. And look, one of the chrysalises might hatch today. Maya grabbed my hand. Now my turn. I made rainbows. With water and prisms. Camille stood nearby, watching us with a to-go cup of coffee and that half-smile she wore when she didn't want to admit she was moved. They practiced all week, she whispered. Charlotte timed herself with a stopwatch. Just like her father, Tessa added, appearing with a smirk that wasn't quite hostile anymore. The judges made their rounds. Charlotte explained her board like a scientist in a lab coat 3 sizes too big. Maya lit up the room with her enthusiasm, jumping up and down when the prism actually cast a rainbow during her explanation. Then my phone buzzed. And buzzed again. Emails. Missed calls. Shareholders in panic. Henderson Global threatening to withdraw. I looked at the screen, then at the stage. The judges approached the microphone. And the winner for most scientific approach. Charlotte Cross. She squealed, clutching her blue ribbon, face glowing. And for creative innovation. Maya Cross. They ran to me, ribbons in hand, eyes bright. You saw, right? Charlotte said breathlessly. We both won. Maya added. I crouched down to hug them. I saw. You were brilliant. My phone buzzed again. My company was falling apart. But I didn't care. This calls for a celebration, I said. Pizza? That place by the harbor? Extra cheese? Maya asked. And watch the storm from the window, Charlotte added. Camille raised an eyebrow. Don't you have calls to make? I met her gaze. Nothing more important than this. The 4 of us sat in a little booth overlooking the rainy harbor. The girls chattered about next year's science fair. Camille smiled over her wine. My phone sat in my pocket. Silenced. The rain beat against the glass like an angry reminder of the price I was about to pay. But I didn't flinch. Because in that moment, surrounded by laughter, sticky fingers, and wonky ribbon bows, I understood something I'd never known before. Losing a company might ruin your reputation. But missing your daughter's first big win? That ruins you. 3 days after the science fair, I flew to New York. The boardroom hadn't changed, sleek, sterile, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling glass. But I had. I could feel it in my bones. I stood at the head of the table, staring down a long row of faces that used to command my every waking hour. Maxwell Porter, chairman of the board and one of my oldest allies, wasn't smiling. The numbers speak for themselves, he said, gesturing toward a graph projected on the wall. 15% down in 2 months. London dead. Henderson Global pulling out. He leaned forward. You're not the Julian Cross we know. I let the silence settle. I wasn't going to defend myself with spreadsheets. You're right, I said simply. I'm not. Murmurs erupted around the table. Maxwell looked annoyed. You left us floundering for a school science fair, he scoffed. That's what this is about? That, I said, was my daughter's first public achievement. I wasn't going to miss it. You're the one who once told me, he shot back, that personal attachments were liabilities. That the company comes first, always. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Camille. The girls made you a thank you card. They're waiting to give it to you tonight. Maxwell softened slightly. Julian, we've built this together. But if you're not back on Monday, we vote. And I promise you, you will lose everything. Then Linda burst into the room. Mr. Cross, she said, breathless. There's been an accident. At the school. Maya fell during recess. They've taken her to the ER. Everything else disappeared. I was already on my feet. Julian, Maxwell warned. If you walk out now, it's done. I turned to face the entire boardroom. Every man and woman who'd helped me build my legacy. No, I said. If I don't walk out now, that's when it's done. That's when I lose what really matters. And I left. Didn't wait for debate. Didn't look back. The helicopter ride to Ocean Heights was the longest hour of my life. I barely glanced at the dozens of messages flooding my phone. Clients, lawyers, analysts. None of them mattered. Only one thing mattered. When I rushed into the ER, Camille was pacing. Tessa sat with Charlotte, who was gripping Maya's favorite stuffed animal with trembling hands. "How is she?" I asked, breathless. Camille turned, eyes red. "Broken arm." She was trying to show another girl how to catch butterflies on the jungle gym. A nurse pulled back the curtain, and there she was, Maya. Tiny, pale, but smiling when she saw me. "Daddy," she whispered. My heart stopped. It was the first time she'd ever called me that. "Is Charlotte going to be okay?" she asked. "She's fine, sweetheart," I said, kneeling beside her. "She's brave, just like you." Later, when they wheeled her out, Charlotte ran up to her and hugged her uninjured side, whispering about how everyone cried when Maya fell and how the nurse gave her 2 stickers instead of 1. And then Maya saw me again. "Daddy," she said. "You came." Camille inhaled sharply, and so did I. I walked to her bed, took her hand gently. "Of course I came. Nothing could have kept me away." "But, your meeting," Maya said, confused. "Mommy told Aunt Tessa it was really important." I smiled. "You're more important." That night, after the girls finally drifted off in Maya's hospital room, Camille and I sat in the hallway, quiet. Her voice was almost a whisper. "You lost the company, didn't you?" I looked down at my phone, still buzzing with board fallout and final decisions. "I did," I said, but I knew the second I stood up from that table that I'd already made my choice. Camille looked at me for a long time. "You really have changed," she said. I shook my head. "No, I just finally realized what matters." She reached over and turned off my phone. Then she slid it into my jacket pocket and folded my coat over it. "Tonight," she said. "Be here, not there." And I was. For the first time in my adult life, I was. 2 weeks after I lost my company, I sat across the kitchen island from Camille, sipping coffee while the girls thundered down the stairs in matching pajamas. Charlotte's pink cast was now covered in doodles and sparkly signatures. Maya had turned one of them into a full comic strip. "Daddy, pancakes?" she asked, climbing onto a stool. "With chocolate chips," Charlotte added sternly. I looked at Camille, who gave the smallest of nods. Chef Julian reporting for duty. Soon, the kitchen smelled like vanilla and joy. Camille sat on the windowsill, laughing softly as Maya designed butterfly-shaped pancakes while Charlotte timed me with a stopwatch, reminding me I'd flipped batch 37 seconds too early. And then came the knock. Linda stepped in cautiously, followed by a man I hadn't expected to see in my living room ever again. Maxwell Porter, still in his signature tailored suit, eyes scanning the family photos on the walls, some from years ago, some recent. Photos I hadn't just appeared in, but earned my place in. "I wanted to see what you threw everything away for," he said. Before I could answer, a voice from the kitchen yelled, "Daddy, the butterfly pancake's burning." He raised a brow. "Daddy." Camille stepped into the doorway with a dish towel over her shoulder, and that quiet pride she wore now more often than not. "This is Sophie," I said, gesturing. "And those are our daughters, Charlotte and Maya." Maxwell stared for a long moment. Then something in his expression cracked. "The wife you never talked about," he said. "The one I never stopped loving," I replied. Maya peeked around the corner. "Want a pancake, mister?" Maxwell blinked. Sure." He stayed for breakfast. And afterward, as Camille took the girls upstairs to wash syrup off their elbows, he turned to me. "The board's decision stands," he said. "You're out." I nodded. "I know, but I might have something for you." He reached into his coat and handed me a folder. "There's a startup here in Ocean Heights. Educational tech. Small. Needs leadership. Why help me?" Because the Julian Cross I knew would never have walked out of a boardroom for a broken arm. And the one I see now might actually build something better. That evening, I told Camille about it. We sat on the back porch watching the harbor, a blanket over our legs, the girls inside watching cartoons. "They're building something for children," I explained. "Interactive learning, especially for kids with learning differences." "Sounds like something worth doing," she said. "They need someone to lead content development," I added casually. She narrowed her eyes. "Are you offering me a job, Mr. Cross?" "I'm offering you a partnership," I said. "In every sense." She didn't speak right away. Just looked out at the water, then down at the silver butterfly pendant I'd given her on Christmas. "5 years ago, you chose your company over our marriage," she said. "But when Maya fell, you chose us." She reached for my hand. "I'm willing to try." The partnership, she added, voice trembling. But she didn't let go of my hand. That spring, we launched the company, Butterfly Tech Learning. The name was Maya's idea. The office was filled with laughter, books, and the occasional paper-winged kite zooming down the hallway. The girls would come after school, doing homework while we worked late. And one golden afternoon, as we picnicked by the harbor, Charlotte looked up from her butterfly migration chart and said, "Mommy, Daddy, I think we should live here forever." Camille looked at me. "We already do." A month later, they moved into the Harbor Street house. Not as guests, as a family. That summer, Maya found a real monarch butterfly on the beach and held out her hand. It rested there, wings pulsing in the sun. "It's dancing," she whispered. "No," Charlotte corrected gently. "It's coming home." And I realized, so was I. The Julian Cross who once believed success meant skyscrapers and boardrooms had vanished somewhere along that rainy coastal road. This version, the father, the husband, the man holding hands on a beach filled with laughter, had found a different kind of empire. One built not on power, but on presence and love.